fences at this point," he explained. And McPherson is not alone. In 2009, NASA then lead global warming scientist James Hansen endorsed a book called Time's Up, An Uncivilized Solution to a Global Crisis, which ponders razing cities to the ground, blowing up dams, and switching off the greenhouse gas emissions machine as possible solutions to global warming. The only way to prevent global ecological collapse and thus ensure the survival of humanity is to rid the world of industrial civilization, the book explains. A future outside civilization is a better life, one in which we can actually decide for ourselves how we are going to live. Hansen declared on the book's Amazon page that author Keith Farnish has it right. Time has practically run out, and the system is the problem. Governments are under the thumb of fossil fuel special interests. They will not look after our and the planet's well-being until we force them to do so, and that is going to require enormous effort. Remember, Hansen was NASA's lead global warming scientist, in charge of the temperature data set, endorsing a book suggesting the solution of calling for ridding the world of industrial civilization. Hansen is a hardcore activist who has been arrested multiple times protesting climate change. He has accused climate skeptics of crimes against humanity and nature. The climate activists are waging war on modern energy, and it seems at times they are winning. As the Daily Telegraph reported in 2011, the era of constant electricity at home is ending. Because of the increasing use of wind power instead of gas, the days of permanently available electricity may be coming to an end. Families would have to get used to only using power when it was available, rather than constantly, said Steve Holliday, chief executive of National Grid. Holliday explained that consumers of electricity would have to change their behavior. The carbon tax. A carbon tax remains one of the most persistent solutions for the dangers climate change supposedly threatens us with. But proponents seem to be ascribing almost magical powers to the tax. In 2013, the Los Angeles Daily News featured the headline, "Can a tax stop global warming? The Citizens Climate Lobby thinks so." In an August 25, 2012 New York Times op-ed, Cornell University economics professor Robert Frank urged a steep carbon tax, one that might raise gasoline prices by 70 cents a gallon for the sake of climate stability and to prevent an end to life as we know it. Frank called this a relatively modest cost to insulate ourselves from catastrophic risk. Former President George W. Bush's Treasury Secretary, Hank Paulson, believes a carbon tax can prevent natural disasters. According to Paulson, "What I've said about a carbon tax is some people that oppose it are opposing it because they don't like the government playing a big role. And you know, the perverse aspect of that is, frankly, those that are resisting taking action now are guaranteeing that the government will be playing a bigger role, because we're seeing now, and we're going to see, an increasing number of natural disasters. Mother Nature acts." But as we saw in Chapter 12, the scientific data show there has been no increase in extreme weather, and of course the Earth's climate will not notice a carbon tax one way or another. Increasing our freedom or their revenue? Yoram Bauman, a professor at Florida State University, has claimed that a carbon tax, which he dubbed the most sensible tax of all, would lower taxes and increase personal freedom. But perhaps the real reason a carbon tax has been proposed has nothing to do with personal freedom, or even with stopping global warming. As the Washington Post noted in 2012, when it endorsed a carbon tax, it could bring in serious money, raising $125 billion a year. The Post editorial argued, a carbon tax would make sense regardless of revenue it would raise, but the policy could bring in serious money. Former Vice President Al Gore has promoted a carbon tax as well. In 2017, Gore's newly formed Energy Transitions Commission issued a document calling for carbon tax. Gore would start the tax at $50 per ton, which would increase to $100 per ton over time, essentially destroying the market for continued robust development of the world's fossil fuel base, according to Heartland Institute energy analyst Fred Palmer. The all-in estimated cost to re-engineer humanity is only a mere $15 trillion, enough money to give every man, woman, and child in the United States more than $46,000, Palmer wrote. Gore's 2017 carbon tax plan represented a complete reversal from his 1992 testimony to the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, when he declared that no government-mandated requirements would be necessary of any kind to control carbon dioxide emissions, instead touting purely voluntary measures. Back then, Gore had testified, "You said, for example, that you were convinced that the only way to stabilize CO2 emissions at 1990 levels is with a large tax. Quite to the contrary, the Bush administration itself produced a rather comprehensive study of the options available to us to stabilize CO2 emissions and found that not only would a tax be unnecessary, but no government-mandated requirements would be necessary of any kind, that we could all but meet the goal with purely voluntary measures if we had leadership from the executive branch with a series of new initiatives that are outlined in that study." Still true today. The late ABC News anchor Peter Jennings reported in 1998, "Al Gore genuinely believes that if he does not prevail, the apocalypse is coming. His opponents think he is the danger."